Hello, my name is Sandro. I'm 26 years old. I live in Brazil and I grew up in the US. I lived there for a big chunk of my life. I lived there for 12 years, but I'm actually Brazilian. And I've been in Brazil for around 10 years. I'm an English teacher here for Brazilian people who want to learn English as a second language. And I've been working as an English teacher for 8 years. I studied chemistry in my undergraduate studies, my undergraduate degree, and I've always loved science, chemistry, biology. That's why I decided to start my studies in chemistry. I finished in 2019 and I went on to do a master's degree in chemistry and science education, and I have since finished my master's degree this year, and I've started a PhD in science education and chemistry education as well. So I still have 3 more years to go to finish my PhD. I also work full-time as an English teacher, as a translator, so I translate books and scientific articles. And I love my work. I feel as though I am, or I have become a workaholic in the past 3 years. I think it's because during my undergraduate studies, I had a hard time. It was a very hard course to be in, very demanding. And during that period of time, I couldn't work, I couldn't invest, I couldn't save money, so that was very frustrating for me. And now I feel I have to make up for lost time. So I'm working long hours and in many different schools, currently 2 schools and 1 university, which I have to conduct my research and publish my articles and participate in weekly or monthly meetings. So when you gather all these responsibilities, it's very tiring, but I still intend on following this routine and this workload for 3 more years. I have to publish lots of articles until the end of my PhD, so I can get or be able to compete in selective processes to possibly be hired in a university as a researcher in chemistry education and science education, so I have to maintain this level of productivity. I also love investing. I've invested since 2015. In the beginning, I started investing in cattle because my parents are landowners here in Brazil. After around 5 years, I was a little frustrated with the cattle because it was difficult to maintain, and I would have to invest more in the infrastructure and the fencing to continue buying more cattle and using this as a viable investment option. So I decided to sell all my cattle and I migrated to the stock market. I started off in the Brazilian stock market, and this happened in 2019 that I made this transition. And since 2019, I've fully migrated to Brazilian stocks, and recently, around 3 months ago, to American stocks as well. I love investing. It's very important for me. It's a way of achieving financial independence, because once you invest a great volume of cash in the stock market or in any other viable investment, you also receive passive income. And my goal is to receive enough passive income that my work is only a thing that I do for pleasure or as a hobby, because I also love working, but I don't need to work to live off of my monthly or annual salary. So that's very important for me. I also love roses. I collect roses. I currently have 40 rose bushes that I have purchased and grown in pots, and once they get too big for their pots, I move them to bigger pots. And I also have currently 30 rose bushes or rose stems that are being propagated on my family's farm. So on the weekends or sometimes late at night when I arrive home from all my work responsibilities, I have to water my garden and tend to my roses and fertilize. Roses have been a challenge to propagate. Some of them take, others don't. But it's something that I love to do. It fills my heart with pleasure. I feel so good when I walk into my garden and I see lots of flowers open, and sometimes you buy these rose bushes and you aren't really quite sure the color or the shape that the flower is. So you discover this throughout the seasons, and it's such a great feeling. I'm also a big fan of movies and series. I've watched a ton of series, but my favorites are Game of Thrones. I think it's really well written, fabulously acted. The cinematography is great. Even though the ending wasn't up to par to everyone's expectations, it's still a great series. I also loved The Walking Dead, even though after a couple of seasons it started to feel a little forced and tiresome and monotonous, but it still had a great run for several seasons. I loved American Horror Story, but after a while it did get monotonous and a little tiring. I loved Fargo. I love watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and Real Housewives of New York. I love I love a look into someone's life, someone that lives a excessive or extravagant or eccentric life. I find that very interesting. Recently I started learning French. So in the beginning of the pandemic, around March 2020, I started learning French by myself since I am a language teacher, and I've been speaking English since I was 2 years old, so I grew up bilingual. I think I have a certain affinity or a facility towards languages, so I started learning French because I had more free time since I was working from home. And I started very intensively studying 3 or 4 hours a day for around 3 months, I think. And when I felt like I had accumulated a considerable amount of words and vocabulary, I started watching lots of series and films in French with French subtitles. In the beginning, it was very hard for me to follow what was happening, but I insisted. Certain times I wanted to give up, but I insisted. And I'd say at the 6-month mark, I felt like I understood 70%, sometimes 80% of everything that was being said. And I was already, for a couple of months, able to express myself with phrases, simple and intermediate phrases about lots of topics regarding daily life, like health, the world, COVID, what we do, our routines, our life plans, our interests. So I was a little bit satisfied with my level of French. Recently, I want to upgrade to a more advanced level of French, so I have started reading more in French to acquire new words, and I have continued to watch episodes, but I have found that the transition from intermediate to advanced is much more demanding, or it requires a lot more time than the transition from beginner to intermediate. What I have planned for the future is to finish my PhD in 3 years, possibly move to Europe, to France. I'd love to work as a professor or a researcher in a French university. Hopefully by then I will be absolutely fluent or very, very close to fluent. Working in a French university would be great, because then I could have this other experience of the world in a different country that I've never been to, or possibly return to the United States, live there again, since I can communicate well in English, and English is a language that I've spoken for 24 years, so it's very much a part of my identity. but we still have to wait and see. Lots of things can happen. And I think that's mostly it. Right now I'm in my lunch break. It's 12:55 here in Brazil, and 1:30 I have my next class of the day, and these classes will extend, I think, until probably 9:30 today. So after I pause this video, I'm going to go back to my French studying and surfing on YouTube, watching some random videos about interior design or celebrity interviews or French content. So I hope you all are well. I hope you take care wherever you are in the world, and hugs and kisses.